Hi, I'm Uncle Mark. Welcome to the channel. I'm just going to be working on a buddy's 2012 Dodge van with the 3.6. They're the original owners. It's got 320,000 kilometers on it, which is about 200,000 miles. Original spark plugs. It's been running okay, but it's time to do something. Now, this can either be easy or it can be an issue. 5 of the 6 plugs came out fine, but we'll get to that in a moment. So under the hood here, well, it's pretty simple. At least this part is. Just got this little engine cover, just more for looks. Actually, it kind of helps it sound a little quieter too. Some insulation under there. It just pops up, and you'll see there's a couple little fingers there that it sits on. And they just pop into these holes. I'll show you that when we put it back together later on. We'll mention what tools I'm using as well. Actually, I'll try and put a link in the description too if you need any of the tools. Nothing super special, but if you have a few little hand tools, that will work. Never did this before. It's first time. It actually wasn't too bad. Lots of things have to come off. So this tube, some kind of a breather tube, like a PVC tube, something like that. It just sucks air. So these should twist and come off. Like I say, there's no liquid or anything in them, so same with this one. Might have to do a little bit of persuading, but it's off anyway. Now, I was just looking at it. It seems a little like it might be wet. It was wintertime here in Canada, and it was pretty cold out. Couple clamps here. You can either use a flat screwdriver, or I believe it's an 8mm socket. 5/16, I guess, or 8mm, or a flat screwdriver. Probably have one of those. The socket works kind of best. The screwdriver a lot of times slips off. Of course, you have to have the room to get at it. So just have to loosen the 2 of these so I could get at some more pieces. And again, depends on how long it's been on there. Should be able to twist it or pry it. These pieces are sitting on plastic, so I didn't want to be too aggressive with it because I don't want to break the plastic. Imagine these pieces are expensive to replace. Get that out of the way. And this piece in the back here is going to have to come off. So there's a little clip here. If you can pop the center out with a screwdriver or a door panel tool, something like that, just gently. It's just plastic. Pop it out. The middle doesn't have to come all the way out. It's spreading some fingers underneath. I'll show you. There'll be a point where the whole thing should be able to just come out. That's what it looks like. And that centerpiece just pushes those fingers out to lock it in place. Next, more of this intake. It's a breather tube. Now it's sitting, basically, there's a couple clips that it's sitting on. They're just fingers that go into a piece of rubber. You can try and undo some of these connectors. And I was trying to figure out how is that on there. So it seemed the best was to kind of feel around the back there and just gently get it to pop out. And it is got a friction fit onto this throttle body. There isn't a clamp or anything holding on there. It's just kind of a rubber piece. And then a couple wiggles. If you can see underneath it, you could see what it's clipped onto. Maybe a person could get their little, if you had a little hand, pop it under there, but it finally came out. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's just a couple rubber grommets, I guess, and it looks like one came off and is stuck back in there. That's all that's holding it on the back. I'll grab that grommet from the back there, though. It just fits into a finger that's got a little ball on the end of it. pops in the hole. Put that on there just so I don't forget. It'll be easy enough to lose that. There. Could set that out of the way somewhere where I won't break it. And now we can see the back coils. And they have a nut, or a bolt basically, holding each one of them in. Just one. So a person could get at, I believe, all three of them. And basically, this clip just has to push down. But if it's had a lot of, dirt and stuff like that in it, it might be a little tough to do. But you can see when I push where my other finger was there, it pulls up that little trigger. Then it's just a 10 millimeter bolt. They're not on very tight. They're just snug. And once you've loosened them, they actually stay in the coil. There's a rubber grommet or something in there that holds them in. And then just give it a jiggle and pull it. Fine if I could put my finger between the coil and the top of the valve cover and pull up on that rubber piece, that could work. Now I'm using a 5/8 special socket for spark plugs. It's got the rubber piece in there. But probably first good idea, just in case there's dirt in there, to blow it out, because once the spark plug comes out, if there's dirt in there, it's going to go into the engine. Don't want that. So once I got it as clean as I could, it's time to turn this out. It would help to add a little bigger ratchet. But maybe it's good I didn't, because I started taking it out and then it started binding. So it's like, ooh, better just tighten it up again. And then loosen it, tighten it. Because it was doing pretty good, and then it's like, ooh, it's getting tight for some reason as it's coming out. So I'm thinking, I don't know if it had a little bit of carbon on it or something. I didn't want to strip it. So I put it back in, took it back out. Anyway, it came out not too bad. But not much room in the back here against the firewall for anything. As you can see, I keep hitting it with the tools. But anyway, there's a spark plug there. 320,000 kilometers, or about 200,000 miles. These are original. The original spark plugs that came with the vehicle. So I think they're supposed to be at 0.044. And my gauge there was a little bigger. And this gap was a lot bigger than that as well. So anyway, put the new one in. That wasn't the problem. Tighten it up. We were debating what kind of spark plugs to get. These were Champion, which were the original ones that came with the vehicle. So I got the exact same ones. I figured if they lasted 200,000 miles or 320,000 kilometers, the price wasn't bad on them. I thought, how much better is it going to get? Why spend, I don't know how much longer this van's going to run for. It's running pretty good right now. So this intake has to come off. There's the silver little bolts we see there that have the torque heads on them. You can either use a little socket or a torque driver. Plus there's a couple hoses that are going to have to come off. And some wiring. Yep, just to get at the front spark plugs. So on this throttle body here, there's a connector with this little red clip. So the clip's got to move backwards.
There we go.
And then it can be squeezed, and this clip should come out. Of course, everything's kind of getting old, and they live in a lot of gravel, so there's dirt in there, and probably from the heat, the plastic has, aged and deformed. You can see it just about comes out enough, so I'm going to gently just pry it with a screwdriver and try and push at the same time. It looks like it's going to come out. Of course, the wiring itself is kind of tied down here, and it's making it hard for everything to pull out. I'll show you what I mean. They had it clipped to the back here. It's actually got a clip right there that goes onto that piece, onto the white metal. few more clips along the back as well that are going to have to come off. I'm going to use my little door panel tool that I've got. You see I use this thing in just about every video. Except for right here. I think I'm going to use my screwdriver. Well. Oh, because that one's clipped on a little differently. Anyway, we'll get that off and try and get a few more things off here. There's another clip here. Little red tab moves back and then it can be squeezed to pull it off. Then there's a bracket that the rest of this wiring harness is hooked up to. There's my little fancy door panel tool. I'm going to try and just get it to pop out here. Little by little. They all stay in that harness, so you're not going to lose a wire or nothing. And then there's a hose here as well, some kind of a breather hose. Do this top one first, so just a little one. I'm just going to let it hang in the back there. Most of the wiring harness is off. But I see there's a bracket at the back here. So I'm going to try and get this hose off too. Another breather hose. Just air that comes in. There's no liquid, so. But it's kind of half melted on here. I have to do a couple different angles on it. Of course, this intake is plastic or some kind of plastic, composite something or other. So I don't want to break it. And I finally broke out the little screwdriver. Once I got it a little bit looser, it came off. Use my door panel tool again. Finally. Well, almost finally. Now there's a bracket on the back here with two little nuts on them. I believe they're 10 millimeter. I'll show you a close-up of them. There's one there. And there's one right around the corner there. So see if we can get those out of the way. Not the easiest things to get at with all the hoses and wires and stuff in the back here, but I'm going to try and use, it's a 10 millimeter. I'm going to try and use a couple different tools between this and some ratcheting wrenches, and they're actually flex head wrenches. Those, man, really nice to have. Here's another wire that's clipped on. So I don't know if you probably could get away with not unclipping that one, but it's not going to really matter. Then this bracket should come off. At least I thought so, but there's one more bolt. It's a big one. It's hard to see, but it's right down there. See, there's like a square plastic thing, this gray thing. It's actually a clip that's on a bolt that's holding another wire loom or something like that. So if I can just pull it off of there. Again, I'm using my door panel tool. I'll put a link in the description. Once I was able to put that away, it's like it's a bolt with a nut on it. I'll show you here. And we can see it now. It's actually doing two things. It's holding that wire on with the clip, plus the rest of it is holding the bracket on. So again, I was like, boy, not too much room, but got my little stubby ratchet. Got a couple little, I'm just using a 3/8 ratchet. I've got a couple little short extensions. They made the job a little easier. And then just pulled it out. I'll just have to remember the washer goes in first. That washer won't fall off either. Now this bracket should just kind of lay back. I think there's something else holding it in there. It's a pretty big bracket too, so it's like, I was going to pull it out, then it's like, nah, I'm just leaving it there already. It's not going to matter. Okay, now we've got a clip here holding the upper rat hose on. And I guess I could pull it off here, but sometimes these things break. So there's another way that this can come apart. You'll have to see what you think is best. Now this, I don't know, I've had poor success with these kind of clips. I need somebody to show me how they really work one of these days, but I fiddled with it a couple times and then it slipped apart nice and easy and went back together nice and easy. And then I thought, oh, maybe I should shoot another angle of this for you to see, and then I couldn't get it apart. I pull the dipstick tube out here for a minute, or not the tube, but the actual dipstick, so that I can put this upper rat hose on the other side of the dipstick tube. And that'll hold it out of the way, because there's a couple little nuts. They're 10mm nuts holding the rest of this intake down, and they just go into a couple of little brackets. There's the other one. They're not on very tight. They're just basically holding the thing down. So I'm going to use my ratcheting wrench here, a flex head wrench, 10mm. These are really easy to lose, this little bolt. So we'll get this side as well. Kind of hard to see there, but there it is. Now, I'm going to use my extension again, and I've actually used an adapter here. It's an 8mm socket. If you get a torque bit, I think it's a T20. They're a pretty common one. Or was it a T25? Anyway, 8mm for sure. And these two metal ones can just loosen them till they're not holding it down anymore, and they can just stay in there. The rest of them I took out, including this one in the end. You can see it down there. There, I use my screwdriver, my torque screwdriver for that. And there goes a screwdriver. I guess better than losing that. And they're just, it's a plastic intake, and it's going into like a plenum or whatever. It's going into another piece of plastic. So don't want to make them too tight later. I want to be careful with them as we take them out now. There is an inch-pound torque spec for them when we put them back in. And a torque sequence as well. See, they're just basically like a plastic screw. Like the screw's metal, but it's going into plastic, you know what I mean? Almost like a wood screw. Putting them into a little magnetic dish. Those come in handy too, just, you know, if you bump it or something like that, they won't fly away. So I just want to make sure that those two are loose enough. Everything else should be okay, except at the front of the motor, right here. See where the arrow was there? Those two bolts are little nuts that were holding it, so you're going to have to lift up and move it towards the windshield a little bit. And then there's this foam piece under here. I'm going to gently take it off. I don't want anything to fall into the engine there. I'm going to put a rag on top just so that hopefully nothing falls in there. And I'm going to work on one of the back coil packs. It's a coilover spark plug. Cop coilover plug. So there's a rubber boot that's going down below this piece here that I'm trying to wiggle off. And this one was lots of fun. And it popped out. What I probably should have done is had my fingers under the rubber piece between the coil and the valve cover. But this one is really stuck in here. It wouldn't really matter how you get it out. So I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get it out of there. But what I did is I sprayed some WD-40 down the hole. And I thought I'll come back to it later. I'll think about it. Didn't want to do anything hastily. So I started working on the rest of them here on the front. I'll show you on the front ones anyway how they come out. So there's a 10mm bolt that I undid. There's a clip here. It just pushes down. And in theory it should push with your finger. But I guess these again are how old now. I just push down with this. push down and pull back, and it should come out. Don't want to force it, but, and then give it a little bit of a wiggle, and this time I put my fingers between the boot and I pulled up, and that's the way they should come out. But that other one in the back there, I tried pulling as hard as I could. It wants to rip a little bit. So what most guys will do is they'll just like use a coat hanger or something and try and just rip the rubber out till they get it all out. I don't want to do that, because then this guy's going to have to buy a new coil. I don't know if you can just get that rubber boot or not. Anyway, you can see the spark plugs down there. Hopefully there's no garbage down there, and that's why I'm going to blow. There, actually did see a little bit of dirt come out, or dust. I think the rest of these came out okay. There was that one first one I showed you. It was binding a little bit, so I kept tightening it again and then loosening it till it would start binding, then tightening it again. And it did finally come out. All these came out fine. Again, figure these are original to the van. We had a cold snap here, like -40 Fahrenheit, and this thing did freeze up a little bit. And I think it was sucking a little bit of oil in there, but it seems to have smartened up now. Now the gap for the spark plug is 0.044 of an inch to 0.044. And when you're torquing the spark plugs, it should be, I believe it's 168 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. You'll need a special inch-pound torque wrench, which will come in handy with lots of other stuff later on. Remember in the old days we used to just do it by hand, but it's like it's not worth it, especially now with these aluminum heads and things like that can easily be stripped. I'm going to put a little bit of dielectric grease on the end of the boot here just so that it doesn't stick to the spark plug, to the to that white ceramic part of the plug. And hopefully they'll be good again for another couple of 100,000 miles. Be kind of cool if this van makes it to that. It's actually in not bad shape. Lots of highway miles, so. But it was time for that. It's running actually really good. It's never ticked. You know, a lot of these, you'll hear guys saying, oh, these 3.6s are junk. This guy's got 3 of them, and this is his wife's fan. It runs fine. Oh, now back to this rear plug here, or the rear coil. I tried all sorts of stuff to get that boot out. Remember we broke that earlier? Or it's stuck in there, so I tried using an upside down spark plug in the hole there to try and get more grasp of the rubber boot, which is, you know, quite long, goes down in there, and it would not move. And remember, I had already poured some WD-40 down there, just down the center of the hole there. I thought maybe it would kind of work its way somehow through there. So like I say, most guys, what they do is they end up just poking it with something, tearing it out. So I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to jam some air in there. I'm hoping that I can get that boot to, you know, go away from the spark plug by putting air in there. The air is going to have to escape somehow. And again, it's like not much room in here. I can barely get my hose and this little tool in here because of the firewall. Like, there's no room at all. I'm really worried that if this doesn't work, I don't know how. Glad that, like, I didn't break a plug, or at least not yet. I'll try it from another angle.
No way.
Like, there is no room back here. And this, amazingly, see, it's coming up. Of course, the tip of my air gun there, the blowgun, is actually a rubber piece too, so it came out. So shocked. Didn't want this guy to have to buy a complete coil, because I don't think you can just get this boot. Did rip it a teeny bit when I was trying to pull it out earlier, but it seems to be running fine. I'll make sure there's some dielectric grease on that one as well. Now once you get all the spark plugs done on that, this piece has to go back on. It's a foam piece. I guess you could accidentally put it on the wrong way. And when you put this on, remember those two bolts on the front that have the little baby nuts on them that are hooked up. They'll have to go in first. So you'll have to kind of, move it toward the firewall and then pull it back so they lock in there. And then make sure that it sits in properly. So I'll just show you what they look like again. Remember those? They go into a bracket. There's one on either side. Of course, these are, when they still have the nuts on them. So I thought I'd just show you that. It'll make sense when you put it back down in there. Then we have to put all these little bolts or screws back in. And remember, we can't over tighten them because we could break something. They're just going into whatever kind of plastic this is below it as well. I guess that's to make it all lightweight, I imagine. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get them to make contact, like turn them down just till they touch. There's that one way in the back. So I believe there's 7 of them. And I'll give you the torque spec right away. And I'll also show you there's a sequence that they want you to tighten them. I guess when the thing sits flat on there, it's not really warped or anything. And why not do it the way the manufacturer suggests, and then there shouldn't be any issues. There's one on this side too, near the oil filter canister. I'm almost thinking these could have all stayed in, would have been captured in the plastic. Anyway, see how they click down and then yeah. Anyway, they're out, they're in, they're going back good. Do this one at the back. Another hole that's just closer to you and I. There's a clip that goes in there that holds more of that intake down later on, like part of the intake tube. Put that one in. And we're just about done. Not too many parts left over. So here's what I was talking about. I just want to bring them till they kind of make contact. They can be snugged down a little bit, but... And then it's time to get the old inch-pound wrench out again, and I believe they are 81 inch-pounds, I believe. That's what's suggested. So it's number 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's the order you do them in, and everything should be good. And that's the order I did them in. So I'm using, again, the socket to put them back in just the way I did before. And this time you'll see I am actually torquing them. And as tight as I thought they weren't going to be, boy, it seemed like, is this torque wrench working? Because they seem like I'm making them kind of tight. So I was just trying to be gentle because, again, it's going into like a plastic, right? I don't want to strip anything. I was like, oh, finally, it tightened up. So that was number 1. So 2's over here at the bottom. So again, if you look back on that diagram, you'll see it. It's actually at the very end of this video as well, because I actually cheated. I've got it written down on a piece of paper while I'm doing this, because I can't remember these things right. This was the first time that I did this exact type of van, so with this engine. Anyway, it went pretty good. Couple more. Don't want to forget the order. And really, you'll need a click type inch-pound torque wrench. Now I'll put the hose back on this side. Dipstick back in. Clip this back together. It should just snap from the top. I know I took it out sideways, but... And then, of course, there's that big bolt with a washer. Washer goes in first. Well, actually, the bracket goes on, then the washer with the bolt goes in that hole. I'm going to put the bracket back on first. Then it'll line up nice. Then, of course, after we get the bolt in, there's that plastic piece that'll snap onto the bolt and hold that wire. It'll hold it on there, keep it out of the way. Of course, with the wires and everything else, it's a little bit tricky to get it in there, but put it on. Of course, hand thread it in first and tighten it up. Let's snug it up. After I do that, I guess you could use stubby wrenches if you didn't have the flex ratchet ones. Put that back on. Then, of course, these wires, they've got some clips too that'll snap into a couple of holes. Oh, we've got those little 10mm bolts to put on first. Those little guys. Stick them on. They're snug. They don't have to be super tight either, but I'm going to tighten them, of course, with a wrench. Do this one, do the other one. We're getting close to being done. And there we go. Of course, there's some of these hoses that have to go back on. This was hard to put back on. Kind of stiff. Put the wire back in. It's got a little hole it snaps into. I think there's another one here too, isn't there? Oh, this one beside the sensor. Plug the sensor in. Of course, the red tab too. Push that in, that'll help it hold. This one snaps into that hole too, another one of those hold downs. Then I was looking for this other piece, and I guess I had it just sitting in the back. There's still another wire. I'll wait for that to click in a little later, but air filter goes in. Then the box itself, got those clips holding it down. Of course, those fingers in the back. They should line up. See them from here. And then just the little clips that hold everything down. Make sure everything's sitting flush. There should be 3 of those. And this one at kind of the back there, a little tough to get at. I got it up and snapped it on. Then this part of the intake, which goes back there and goes onto your throttle body. It's got 2 little fingers that are towards the back that it sits on. Remember those rubber pieces that one of them fell out at the start? So those 2 guys. And if you look under here, of course, there's those rubber grommets. I'm just going to spray them with some WD-40. You could do silicone maybe or something. I just want them not to be... I want them slippery when I snap that on there. And this was not easy to get on. Oh, that's going to be in the way. Can't do much about that. The engine cover sits on there after. So it's got to go in the back here against the firewall. Line it up on those 2 little fingers, if you want to call them that. Then this is in the way here. So I'm trying to get it to sit on there. And I thought, oh, we're done. Not really. So line them up with those 2 little fingers with the little balls on the top. And they should snap in there. Plus, this finger goes over that hole. Plus, as you can see, this piece that goes over your throttle body. Show you from the bottom here. Those 2 guys, it's like, man, they're hard to see. Once they snap on there, hopefully it's going to line up with the throttle body too, and that's just a friction fit.
Come on, baby.
I found after that it was easier to put my hands on top of it, both hands, and try and feel around the back and then slide it around. Something like this. It took me a little while. It probably took a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes of fiddling. And like I say, then I found it was easier to grab it from the back here and try and line it up. Easier, but not the easiest. Of course, make sure the throttle body lines up and this hole here. Then there's a little push pin. That's going to hold it down with the little fingers. Oh, let's do this first. It only goes on one way. I guess it could go on a couple ways. But the trick here is the way the screws or bolts, they point up. And, you know, if you really figure it out, it really, I guess it could go on the opposite way and you'd have to do some bending, but you have the video to watch. There's a couple tabs on here too. There's one by this finger that'll line up this whole rubber intake hose, I guess. 8mm socket or your flat screwdriver, or what was 5/16? Is that the other size? All should fit. It just has to be snug. Then the clip that goes in this hole, that's what it looks like. Pop it in and then push it down. It'll spread the little fingers and it should hold it down. Are we done? Pretty close. Oh, yes. We have these little bolts in the front, don't we? I believe they're 10mm. There's two of them. They're holding the front of the intake down. They're just little guys like that. There's one on this side as well. There it is. I guess in theory, if you forgot them, they're still being held down, but should put it all back together the way it was. Do that one, do the next one, and then let's get, as this hose here, I think they re-burn some of the gases. It'll be like a PCV outlet or something like that. And there's this one as well. So this was in the back here. It's on a metal hose, or metal, yeah, it's kind of a metal hose with a rubber on the end of it. Snaps down in there. Then this big guy goes across here. Only one way this can go on. It's just a friction fit again. That side, and then around the corner here. Get that on. And then just that little cover here that's got your engine size on it. Got 4 little fingers that snap into there. They got little balls in the end of them. I find if I line the 2 front ones up, clip gun on, and then the back ones will line if you just push them down. Snap that on there. So this one that's closest to where your oil filler is, easiest one to see. Snap that one down. It'll spin on it a little bit. Get this one to line up. There it is there. Should hear it click. Tap it down everywhere and then just lightly see if it comes up, and if it doesn't, it's locked on the proper way and I am done. Well, that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully that was helpful. Just remember, don't force anything, take your time, make some notes if you have to, and save yourself a couple bucks. If you like the video, please give me the thumbs up. You can subscribe down in the corner, as always, if you're not already a subscriber. Plus, playlist on this van. This is a 2012 to almost current 2020, something like that. Big blue circle just above that. The yellow flashing arrow points you to a card at the very top. That brings you to the playlist. Until next time, I enjoyed spending, 45 minutes with you. Hopefully it was helpful. Until next time, I'm saying bye-bye from Uncle Mark. You'll get all the notifications. It's easy. The little dog will show you how. Ring the bell. Ring the bell. What? No.
course.
Whoa! Well, hopefully that was helpful to you. If I would have seen